Versatile Mage. Chapter 369. 4th Tier Fire Burst. Flame with the color of rose. Is this rose flame? Dongfang Ming immediately recognized the flame. The fire of the groundbreak surged toward the blue flames with overwhelming heat. In terms of temperature and ferocity, rose flame was considered one of the best among all flames. The blazing red flame rushed into the burning zone of the faint blue flame and rapidly extinguished it. They were like a pack of wolves stumbling into a fierce tiger, backing off and scattering as they did not dare to face the rose flame head-on. Mo Fan further transferred his energy to expand the flame. A fiery rose blossomed on the field, emitting a blinding glow. The faint blue flame was snuffed at an incredible pace, as the rose-colored flame thoroughly dominated the area. Unfortunately, the rose flame could not last as long as blue flame. Each flame possessed different traits. In comparison, rose flame was more destructive and ferocious, while blue flame was able to last longer and spread rapidly. As he thought, when Mo Fan drove the blue flames away from his vicinity, they were not thoroughly extinguished. They continued to linger in the surroundings and reignited the dry patch of grass nearby, as if they were waiting for the perfect timing for a comeback. So you recognize the flame? Mo Fan chuckled when he saw the faint blue flames scattering. Humph, I guess you are somehow responsible for the deaths of my elder brothers. I will take you down and interrogate you at the Enforcement Union. Dongfang Ming's eyes flickered furiously. Back then, Dongfang Ming was tipped off by an old hunter that some flame with high temperature was discovered close to a village outside of Hangzhou's boundaries. As a result, the village had suffered a serious drought. Dongfang Ming was initially planning to acquire the flame for himself, but he could not make it as he had to attend the trial of the Enforcement Union. Therefore, he had given the chance to his elder cousins who were rather talented, instead. To his surprise, they somehow went missing. It took him a tremendous amount of effort to discover the information about Rose Flame, and in the end, it had also disappeared. Initially, Dongfang Ming thought he would never be able to find the truth. He did not expect he would stumble into the murderer of his few brothers here. Dongfang Ming, calm yourself, our goal is to stop them from entering White Mountain. We must wait for backup from the Royal Guards, blurted out Lu Jungming. I don't need you to tell me what to do. Dongfang Ming was infuriated. The flame engulfing his body became stronger. Mo Fan was just worried that his enemy would choose not to fight him head-on to drag the battle out. Everything would be easier for him now that the opponent had gone mad himself. He stood there and surprisingly, he was not casting an intermediate spell. A rose-colored flame was instantly ignited on his hand after he flipped it, like a magician elegantly summoning a red rose out of nowhere. Fire burst. Mo Fan threw the fireball in his hand forward. It drew an arc in the dark sky before landing right at Dongfang Ming's position. Mo Fan could not help but admit that Dongfang Ming's talent was fairly impressive. His casting speed was too quick. He had already finished casting a star pattern for an intermediate magic while he only finished casting a basic spell. If he had sufficient energy, Mo Fan was able to cast Fire Burst continuously, allowing him to launch fireballs like a machine gun. However, this Dongfang Ming was able to launch fiery fists rapidly, like a high-firing rate bazooka. Mo Fan had learned from his previous mistake. He was reluctant to face his enemy with an intermediate spell, trying to attack me with a mere basic spell. You're too naive. Dongfang Ming was not bothered by Mo Fan's fire burst. He continued to align the star patterns under his feet. With the strength of the flame engulfing his body, the basic level fire burst was unable to inflict any damage to him even if it hit him accurately. Who's being naive here? Uttered Mo Fan with a grin. Mo Fan clenched his fists and detonated the fire burst with his will. It immediately triggered an explosion with a diameter of 2 meters. The impact forcibly knocked the proud Dongfang Ming a few meters away. The fireball was fairly huge and astounding. The air nearby buzzed loudly due to the impact of the explosion as wild sparks scattered in all directions. The effect of rose flame made the fire burst, rupture even more violent. Most importantly, The strength of Mo Fan's fire burst, rupture was comparable to the fiery fist produced by an ordinary flame. The fire burst, rupture's power had exceeded Dongfang Ming's expectation. He was lucky that he also possessed the fire element. Otherwise, the impact alone could have turned him into a half-cripple. Your fire burst. Dongfang Ming rose to his feet with a scorched face. Apart from anger, his eyes were full of astonishment too. Why is his fire burst, rupture, so powerful? That was almost comparable to the power of an intermediate spell. I guess you're the first person to have a taste of my 4th tier fire burst. Mo Fan wore a smile. More fireballs were summoned on his palms at the same pace. A 4th tier basic spell. Dongfang Ming was stunned. He was rather proud of himself for having wing equipment when he was only an intermediate magician. He thought he could easily dominate the intermediate magicians, but he never thought there was someone even more prodigal than him, to rank up a basic spell to the 4th tier. One could only strengthen a basic spell to that level using soul essences, and each of them would cost between 3 million to 5 million RMB. Normally, in order to guarantee that the nebulas would fully absorb them, most people would refine them with soul essences around the 5 million price mark. Therefore, 7 stars would require 7 soul essences in total, which would sum up to 35 million RMB. He could easily buy a fairly outstanding soul seed with that amount of money. You're such an idiot to waste money on something as useless as chicken ribs, rebuked Dongfang Ming, as if he could not accept the fact that someone was richer than him. You should look at my soul seed before describing it as chicken ribs, said Mo Fan. Rose flame had an extremely high temperature. It was one of the most blatantly destructive among all flames, being able to further multiply the damage of a fire magic by around 2.5 times. The 4th tier fire burst did not provide anything special. The only difference was its power was almost doubled compared to the 3rd tier. Therefore, as the improvements stacked on top of one another, Mo Fan's fire burst was almost 5 times stronger than an ordinary fire burst. Fire burst, rupture was basically the most destructive basic spell among all the elements. After its power was multiplied 5 times, it was basically comparable to an intermediate spell. On top of that, Mo Fan was so adept at casting basic spells that he could throw the fireballs instantly. Even if its power was only half that of an intermediate spell, it was more than enough to blast Dongfang Ming until he shut his mouth. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.